Good morning, everyone. Happy Friday. Before we get started with our analysis and looking here at the NASDAQ opening, I just want to direct your attention to the bottom of the stream. There's a risk disclaimer down there. Trading futures is risky. Nothing that you see on the stream should be misconstrued as financial advice. Everything you see here is educational. And the stream itself is 15 to 20 seconds variable behind live. So anything that you see me doing on stream has already happened in the past. So with all of that said, we're coming into Friday's session after a jobs report that happened here about an hour ago, which the market really liked. We we came in underneath expectations for jobs. So I think the market is responding, believing that that will limit the chance of a rate cut here in a month or two. But we got some exhaustion here at the peak, up here near almost 29,900. This is, similar to earlier this week. We got up here, got rejected. Still looking on a higher time frame. If Motive Wave's gonna let me scroll back, thank you. There's this top here around 30,065. That is a triple top from back in early July. This is where the NASDAQ got close to during the first part of this week's ramp up, and ultimately got rejected pretty much in the exact same area. Was actually a really nice short, came all the way back to the other side of value, held a low around 29,300. And is now rallied back up to the middle of the range. The point of control for the week still sits down around 29,550. They traded the absolute crap out of that price yesterday. If we zoom back out, you can see that after a ramp during the open, that we pretty much just traded sideways for the rest of the session. Did a ton of volume down here. Held our absorption levels that we are testing down here perfectly at like 465. I took part of this trade here for a decent sized winner yesterday, but that was about all that I touched it. I didn't realize that I could have stayed and just rotated the same like two prices for that long. So we'll see how things open up here this morning. If the buyers are able to get up above the pre-market high, the overnight high from the data drop, then I think a very like obvious target is obviously this week's high, up around this 30,000 level. Now, when that's about 200-ish points away from where we are right now. So whether they can get it up there and get an oomph to get across this kind of triple, almost quadruple top now after earlier this week, that becomes to me a very obvious target. But whether they have the volume and the momentum to get us up that high, kind of TBD there. But that's, I think, a very obvious upside target. If we start rolling over, then I think the 550, where we've done so much volume over the last basically 24 to 48 hours, becomes kind of a magnet to the downside. So we're going to watch it for about 30 minutes. I watch the first 30 minutes to kind of gauge what the market's going to do, set the 30-minute opening range, and then kind of determine where we're going to go from there. But those are the two areas that I'm looking at now. If we're trading in the middle of those, I'm not super excited to be taking trades. But if we break the high with volume and give a chance at a nice pullback somewhere, that'll be probably a place to look to get long to see if we can get up above 30K and up above that triple to quadruple top up there at 30,065-ish. Otherwise, if we get down to below 650 or somewhere kind of take out the data drop, the low of the data drop candle, that one I'm a little less excited about to the downside. Not that I don't think that this will be a magnet, but we're up on the day. It's Friday. I don't know. It just, and also just like going to be trading inside of value if we have to take that trade. So not completely opposed to it, but would be more excited about the long side of that setup. Um, if we're below the data drop high here from the pre-market, I almost think that if you're going to take that short, you want to see like a sweep down here and then a pop back up that you can get like short on a lower high. Otherwise, I'm not sure that the risk to reward like really makes a lot of sense if you're shorting down here, because I would assume that they hold, this 550 to 500 range. So I think um, I think things get a little tight to the downside there. So that's kind of what I'm looking at for right now. And we'll see how that plays out. The other thing to watch this morning, which is less about the market and more about um, my own process here, is I'm trading a fresh 50K eval from Lucid Trading, um, and going to be trading 3 micros instead of my typical one, which I trade 1 micro in a 25K funded or eval account. I have never successfully in my career been able to size up and be successful. So I thought that might be kind of a fun experiment. I try it from time to time. Thought that might be a fun experiment for viewers to watch, as I know that that can be a struggle for a lot of different traders. Uh, I don't plan to be taking any off. That's going to be something that I think just overcomplicates things in the beginning. So I'm just going to trade 3 contracts in the same way that I would trade one. So one stop, one target, no in between takeoffs, anything for at least the first week or two that I'm trying this. But this is just kind of, I'm first a developer, coding all of the Scalper IQ studies, and second, a trader. And so, still, as always, I don't think there's ever like um, a final place that people get where they're like, well, I'm just a good trader now and I don't need to develop any further. I don't think that this is really a an activity like that. So you guys get to watch me do the same thing and hopefully not make the same errors that I've made in the past, which is, to get jumpy and hesitate on taking trades or take them off too early. Um, you know, Kind of like when you're sizing up at any point in time, like you kind of have to view it as just viewing the same amount of like risk to reward. So if you're typically risking 20 points, you just have to think that you're still risking 20 points on 3 contracts. Now, your account size and all of those kinds of things are important details. And I'm very aware that trading 3 MNQ on what is technically a $2,000 drawdown on this account is pretty tight. But the math on it, if I'm using a 20-point stop or ish, 20-point stop ish each time, the math is like, I think it's like 16 or 17 like straight stop outs in a row. Um, my stats don't tell me that that's really very likely to happen. That would be a pretty incredibly bad run, even by my standards. But there's a chance that, if I'm not trading well, that obviously trading with more size is just going to uh, make those mistakes worse. So you guys will get to see me do that. If I take 1 or 2 nice trades here in the eval account, I might switch over to my funded account and go back to 1 contract, but I'll let you guys know if that's something I'm doing. But this is like, to me, the only way that you figure out how to sort of navigate some of those things is actually doing them live. And when I first started trading, prop firms were not a thing. So sizing up was incredibly painful and very fast way to lose money. So, for whatever the cost of this account was, I can't remember exactly. There was like some kind of promo. I want to say it was like 75 or 80 $80. Like, the risk overall is really quite low from like a dollar standpoint versus if you're trading a personal account and trying to go from one contract to three contracts, uh, you know, it's the learning curve is going to be a lot more expensive there. So I think that's a huge benefit of prop firms now is being able to put on what is some monetary risk, like $75 or $80 or $100, whatever your account cost is not nothing. So you have skin in the game. So, most people probably not going to go in and just like, you know, blow it just for fun because that will start to hurt after, two or three or four or five accounts. But it's also not like so detrimental, to your own wallet in terms of how much damage you could actually do trading 3M and Q live on like a personal account. So it's a nice little in between. So interestingly enough, feel like listening to other people talk and like with my own experiences and stuff, uh, it's like evals have kind of become the new sim trade, right? So, people are like, I'm fine whenever I'm trading an eval account, and then they get funded, and then the pressure comes back to be like, oh my gosh, this is now real money. Um, I had got a funded account or passed an eval like a couple weeks ago and immediately went on a losing streak in the new funded account. So I feel like that's just sort of the christening of the new account. But I think everyone struggles with this stuff, and you know, I don't I don't think anybody benefits from like me getting on stream and pretending that like I'm somehow, you know, this masterful, amazing trader. We spend time here going through the same process that I think a lot of people go through because I think that's more helpful. And just yeah, I think honesty up front is like I tend to do better in an environment where I'm developing studies and observing market behavior. And I don't know that those type of skills always translate over directly into I'm a fantastic day trader. I think they're different skill sets, and I really think that like long term, I think that the the skill sets that you're building around like trading live successfully is I would say like a very specific type of skill set surrounding trading. I know a lot of people that are like really good at swing trading. They put risk on, they have a stop in place, and then they just don't watch it. And, inevitably intraday trading is much faster, a lot more decisions. To me, it feels a bit more like a sport in a way. Like it's very like performance driven in terms of like your mental state, ability to control emotions, all of that kind of stuff. So it's not just I think like I'm good at reading the market. I think a lot of people are good about reading the market. Are you good when the market gets to a place to actually execute your plan? Are you okay to, deviate from that plan in an appropriate way if you need to? And how do you handle whenever you start to get inevitably frustrated because it's arguably a very frustrating activity from time to time. So just a little background there. I don't ever want to come across as one of these, uh, you know, financial gurus that is like, well, I only take winning trades, and I've only ever been a good trader, and I've was only a bad trader many, many, many years ago. I'm like, no, I've been a bad trader within the last year, 100%. So it's still something that I'm working on and developing. And honestly, the Scalper IQ tools that you see like help me personally like visualize the market. It's how I see how the market trades, and you guys get the benefit of seeing the same tools. So you guys are actually getting the benefit of me not being such a good trader in the past, is sitting down and being like, if I actually code something, which is a lot easier for me and the way my brain works, I can actually code something into being able to see what the market looks like. So buyers determinedly holding 700 here. So that's looking like a nice place if they can continue to hold this area right above the previous day's high. So that makes a lot of sense. Um, the opening range low is like just barely below the previous day's high. So this is like not to say like I'll probably say this and the bottom will fall out, but a general kind of rule of thumb that I follow is like, people will trade the opening range in lots of different ways, but like if you're one of those people that are just like, I'm gonna I'm gonna sell as soon as we break the opening range low, if those are your mechanical rules, good, good, do execute what you need to. But I don't like opening range low break setups when it's interacting with the previous day's high and it's also interacting with the previous day's mid. That to me looks like an area that uh, that could blow up in your face pretty quickly. So that is not a trade that I'm probably going to take. As I said, if I'm going to look for a short, we're going to need to probably get to like, 625, 600-ish, and then get a reoffer happening somewhere higher to manage risk, to make it worth the risk of like putting on a short down to like 550-ish. But right now, just trading in a range. It was a pretty nice reoffer of the open there that they got. Just like looking at the the higher time frame chart, like why am I going to be excited about shorting during this week? So if we were still down here or like trading below 29,200 outside of value, I might be like, well, at that point we might give a bunch back, go back to like last week's high, but last week's high is 1,000 points away. So barring a bunch of momentum to the downside, I don't really see us getting down in that range. The other thing to keep on your radar is I believe there's a Fed speaker here in about 15 minutes. So right as the opening range gets set. So those are always kind of I'm just going to double check who it is that's speaking. Not that it really matters to me. So Fed Barkin is speaking at 9 a.m. Central, 10 a.m. Eastern. Just head on a swivel for that because sometimes the market with Fed speakers like just doesn't care. But after we just had this jobs report, which was a bit of a surprise, he may talk about that, and the market will probably be looking towards him as sort of like the first analysis from a Fed speaker that comes out after this surprise jobs report. And if he says something like, I don't know, it's impossible to predict both what he's going to say and what the market's going to do for it. But for example, if he comes out and says, yeah, this job report is a surprise, but it doesn't really change my view on raising rates here in a month or two, the market will probably not like that. So I don't know exactly how long he's speaking for, and sometimes they release their speeches like in text format, like as they start their speech, and then like the algorithms read them and react to them. And other times it's actually a live speech. So I don't know which one of those this is, but I'm probably going to be a little slower to take a trade um, right at 9 a.m., knowing that one or two comments from a Fed speaker can definitely send this in one direction or another. Sometimes the moves don't stick, right? But it's just like extra risk to be aware of right now that it only takes one or two sentences from those guys to really tick the market off. And or he could come out and say, this job report is a surprise and definitely going to have impact on the decision for rates here in a couple months. And if he if he does that, then we may skyrocket there. So just head on a swivel. Good to know. One of you is messaging me saying that Barkin was not a dissenter and voted to hold on the last rate. So uh, also with some more colorful language about what your position is and what will happen if he decides to change his mind. So we are hoping for you that he does not change his mind. Um, but just, the 9 a.m. rollover always has some algorithmic volatility to it. Um, so we're going to get an extra bit of that. Um, Speaking again to me attempting to size up here on this fresh 50K eval, I am going to trade it basically, and you guys can call me out in chat if I don't do it, but I'm going to trade this basically the same way that I trade one contract. So I won't be taking partials off. It'll be 3 contracts, 1 stop, 1 target. no runners. One of the things that I have messed up in the past when attempting to size up is I end up changing the way that I trade. So I'd be like, oh my gosh, I'm going to take one off at 10 points and I'm going to take one off at 20 points. And then that's not really like if you've watched the stream, that's not really how I trade. So, I'm typically like 20-point stop looking for 60 to 100 points. Um, and that's how I'm gonna approach this to just keep it simple. I know there's lots of strategies and risk management things about like you can take one off at this number of points and that covers this part of the rest of your position. And that's all stuff that like I can like add and modify later on. But for now, I'm just gonna you know, I have 3 set on Motive Wave for contracts, so I will just be trading them as basically a quote single lot. It's 3 micros, but not planning on target off here, target off there. That's something I can add in to a couple of weeks. All I'm really doing is taking the risk that I was working with on a 25K account and the drawdown there, and just working with it on a slightly larger account. So 3 is probably like on the edge, but when I was looking at the numbers, like 17 to 18 stop outs in a row just doesn't fit my stats at all. And so even though the risk on paper is higher, um, and probably if I was trading a cash account with $2,000, like I wouldn't trade 3 micros, no way. But in a prop account, as we already talked about, that costs $75 to $100. I don't actually remember what it cost, but it was in that range with their current discounts. Uh, I don't think it's too much risk. Um, so when I looked back, like my losing streaks in the last like 4 to 6 months were like 4 to 5. I think there was maybe like a 7, right? So we're still like not even halfway through, you know, 7 losing trades, would still be less than half the drawdown on the account. So I will still stick to the same type of rule. Like if I'm on stream, you guys if you've watched, like I don't take a ton of positions. It's not like I'm taking like 10 different trades per stream. But if I do happen to take 3 stop outs in a row, I'll either um, switch to a different account, or that'll just probably be more than likely that'll probably just be it for the session for me. Usually, if I get stopped out 3 times in a row, I'm either not seeing like the market properly, or some combination of I'm frustrated. So, uh, well, hold me to that. You guys see me take more than 3 trades and keep trading because it's just easier on a fresher day, at that point. And since the risk will be really, really tight on this 50K eval, um, I think just like 3 strikes and be done for the day. Because that would be so like each trade is risking, like at a 20-point stop, you're risking about $120 on the account. So like 3 losses would be, just over 300. So not devastating, but don't want to do that. Don't want to do any further damage past that. I'll still do the same things with my um, targets whenever it comes to like, saying, if it gets above this price, I'm going to move my stop to break even, or tighten up my stop or whatever it might be. So literally the exact same trading techniques and strategies that you guys have seen me trade live with up to this point on the stream will be the same ones I do, just with 3 contracts instead of 1. Opening up pretty choppy. We did a lot of this yesterday. Um, no real reference points for absorption just yet. We have this one from the overnight. I actually had my overnight zones turned off, but they're just trading inside. They're just trading around it, which is kind of obnoxious. Doing a bunch of volume up here. I mean, you have a very distinct cliff volume shelf here, right at like 710 to 700. Just gonna turn, this zone is not helping me. We're not reacting to it at all, so it's just traffic, so I'm gonna turn it off. So like yesterday, this was the exact same type of price movement, which was like 474 to 5, call it like 100-point rotation that even compressed a lot more than that into the close. So if you were looking for continuation yesterday afternoon, like basically after 12 p.m. Central, like you were in for a bad time. I really wanted this reoffer at the open of GlobeX. Like I was sitting here waiting when it opened to see if they could get it above 650-ish to short it off this same absorption level that they had like tagged, got close to tagging and rolled over. And they basically did the exact same trade overnight, but they just didn't get high enough for me to start watching it. I needed to see it trade above like 650 before I could get in. But glad I wasn't awake for the next test of that because they did get it above, did reject it, and then ramped it into the data. So now getting a little bit of selling back to the downside. The low of the data candle is like 617-ish. I'm a little bit annoyed. I really don't want to have to short this, which I don't have to do anything, but I just feel like falling back into the point of control for this week is going to make for like just more, like it might be directional to get there, but might be really choppy once we're there. So opening range or 30-minute opening range is set in a couple of minutes. Just trading around the session mid here. And same kind of thing with the opening range low, right? Like I don't, right below the mid, just to me, like I know that you can, and I have done it before. It's just not my favorite trade. Like if we're up on the day, we're up in the overnight, we ramped from data. Yeah, we can roll over and give a bunch of it back, which is what we're doing right now. But I find this a much harder type of short to take um, than say like we open and we're like gapping down and because then you're just kind of following the momentum. But right now we're just trading inside of the data candle. It's also a good moment to mention if you're not familiar with trading fixed volume charts. Uh, if you're like looking back historically and you're like, wow, I could have just like got long here, right? Like not realizing that that's a data candle. These candles just appeared instantaneously. Like there is no trading going on, not any type of making trading for a human being going on in there. So just know that about when you're looking at historical parts of a fixed volume is that they'll make a new candle like every 2 milliseconds if you can do 500 contracts that fast, which means that like you're not going to actually be able to trade that. So when we're trading at a normal speed, I think that volume charts are the way to trade futures, in my opinion. That's why a lot of our studies are built around a 500 vol chart for NQ and a 1,000 fixed volume chart for ES. So just know that if you're not familiar with them or you're trying them out for the first time, that is a nuance that this candle didn't take 30 seconds, this candle didn't take 1 minute, or whatever your linear time frame is, which then allows you to both look at what price action is and be like, oh, I could have got into that trade. With a fixed volume chart, these candles just appear instantly. So just know if you look back and you're kind of like looking at either, not, I don't know about back testing, but like if you're looking back at a chart on a 500 vol and be like, I could have got in here. No, you couldn't have. So unless you just had a bid or an offer waiting. So still trading inside the data candle. So getting a little bit of push here up off the mid, session mid. And that's the opening range getting set there. So our opening range is like not very wide, which makes me not excited. Our opening range is 820 to 643, so not even 200 points for the opening range on the NASDAQ, which makes me think tighter range, compression, choppy, probably need to be very sniper like in what entries or trades we decide to take because they may just not go as far. So depending on what the actual volatility looks like. So it's like, so we're tight range, but like we're still trading quite fast. So I was going to look to see if we were trading a little bit slower, which we are not at the moment, whether I could potentially use a 15-point stop, but it's moving too fast for that. And I know there's different measurements people use. Sometimes people use ATR, you know, all sorts of different things. But all I have to do for myself is I just have to look at the depth of market and see how fast we're trading to be like, nope, nope, I will not be using a 15-point stop. Probably a 20 to a 25-point stop is going to be the way to do that. There's a big order here at, or a larger size order, not huge, but 40 contracts at 39 and a quarter. I think buyers don't want this to hang out down here for a terribly long time because I think that that 550 that we talked about at the beginning of the stream, which we just like rotated around like a bazillion times and probably frustrated the crap out of everybody yesterday. I think that becomes a magnet the closer that you get to it. And at the moment, you're only at like 100 points away. So, and as we mentioned, if you just joined, there's a Fed speaker who is giving his speech right now. So, market doesn't always react to it, but just to inject a little bit of volatility and uncertainty into an already volatile and uncertain instrument. What else could we ask for on a Friday morning? All right, first point that I'm going to place that I'm going to look at, and this is really just like I want it on my depth of market to look at, is going to look at the bottom of the data candle, which is 618, which they're very close to at the moment. Um, I don't, I probably won't take like a long trade off of that level. I just want to see if there's any buyers that decide to step in or whether we're just going to kind of continue our uh, dump back to the point of control. And on a higher time frame, this is not only today's point of control, it was probably yesterday's point of control too, and it is this week's point of control. So extra magnetic effect, just a lot of volume done down in that area. See, was that yesterday? Oh, I don't have multiple profiles up. Motive Wave's volume profiles sometimes don't really like, it's tricky to get profiles on each and every session in the same way that you see here. They have like multiple studies, like different, like they have like this, which is like volume profile. But then they also then have like weekly volume profile, which is like somehow a different study, which just like doesn't make any sense to me. So, but I can almost guarantee that the point of control yesterday was sitting around 550 to 525. So just the same area again. This big bubble here is just showing that there was some positive delta that happened on the low of this candle here. So just flagging some divergence. If you're going in a downtrend, you typically don't want to be seeing a lot of positive delta at the bottom of candles. That means that buyers are basically stepping in and aggressively buying the low of a pullback candle. So you're getting a little bit of a reaction off of that. But as with anything for signals coming from the scalper IQ studies, like they all need to be taken within context. Um, so like if this was an area that I was already looking at to potentially get long, then that would give me extra confidence to be getting into that trade, but I'm not interested in getting long down here. They just took out the low of that data candle by like a point or two. Um, I get the sneaking suspicion that they might just like bleed this back down. I'm probably more interested in seeing if they can reoffer like above 700 at this point. It's just it's a tricky setup so far, to be honest, because, if they get back above 700, you're also technically back above the mid. You held the opening range low and you're back above the previous day's high. None of those things are bearish. So, but taking out the low of the data candle is not helpful for buyers. So, one of the things I think about, we talked about like how fast moves can like this can be. Um, is that if you have a bunch of sellers that happen to get trapped in like the speed of this data move, or they were just offsides for the whole thing, if we like hold the mid or we hold the previous day's high and then we ramp, then like that's extra fuel to be able to like push us higher. But if we're like taking out the low of that candle, my assumption is that people are able to get back out of that position. So you lose some of that short fuel that could have been in here if we'd had a shallower pullback. Um, and whenever I say stuff like that, like obviously, like I never know what happens. Like I just find that markets make more sense to me when I come up with like, you know, people, human type narratives, you know. Um, so like I know that like if I happen to get caught in a data drop or got trapped in a short position here, which I wouldn't because I would have a stop in place, but not everybody trades like that. So I know that like if you were like, oh, and it pulled back and now I'm almost break even, if it traded this much against you, you're going to be real happy to get out at break even or a little bit of profit. So not really so shocking to see them bouncing that at the bottom of the data candle, but you lose your extra fuel to go higher, in my opinion. I see all these different like live trading streams that have different like promos going on. Most of them are like for prop accounts, Apex and places like that. I'm just gonna try to drink a different beverage on stream every day and see if I can get sponsored by whatever I'm drinking. This morning it's Cocoa 5, which is like coconut juice and orange juice, like sports drink. So I just need somebody works at that company to also be a day trader that also likes order flow, telling me there's a chance. So far, just gross price action. There's our first imbalance for the RTH session. See it right there, 178. And it's also the dashed line on screen. It interests me a little bit, but I don't love that location. That just feels like somebody who is potentially, covering at the bottom of this data candle. So they got a nice push off of it. They had basically a big buyer there, right at this. That's 2 holds of the same price here as well. So let's see what they do when they come back in here. The reason I like it is because it's by the bottom of the data candle. The reason I don't like it is also because it's at the bottom of the data candle. I actually really, the main reason I don't like it is the proximity to 550 right now. Like you basically just have, in my opinion, a giant magnet that is sitting right below price. So while this is doing this, I don't really have a trade setup sitting in front of me. Let me look at what is going on in the broader market. As I have mentioned on stream before, I don't trade stocks, but I will keep an eye on what some of the bigger names are doing just to kind of get an overall health picture of the NASDAQ. So Home Depot is leading the way in the S&P 500 this morning, up 2%, followed by Amazon is up 1%, Nvidia is up 1%, and everything else is like flat-ish. Most of the mega caps are like flat to mildly red-ish. Intel down a couple percent, getting rejected over $100, which it rallied back above this week. Exxon is down a little bit, so energy is also pulling back. It's kind of interesting. I'm not sure that I've seen energy pulling back on a Friday in a minute. I don't keep track of that, so that's just like off the top of my head, but that could be a bit more of a signal that the market is more confident that we're not going to be doing any military activity in the Middle East. So maybe more positive vibes coming out of that. So we went basically right to 550 here. This low is 61-ish. So yeah, that was kind of the magnetic trade. But since the opening range got set, I really haven't seen a place that I wanted to get in at, and we drifted basically so close to it that to me the risk to reward wasn't awesome there. So that's why I'm not in a trade. Is I wanted to see like I think we talked about as the opening range was getting set was like taking out the mid and then popping back up over 700, and we got one look at that and they didn't give us a second look, and so just put in a lower high and now bleeding lower. Let's see here. What else is going on in the market this morning? Just kind of a mix across the board. I don't really see too much going on. It's just kind of flat-ish. Yeah, and the NASDAQ is up just under 0.5%. ES is basically flat, and the Dow is like exactly flat. Bitcoin is up 1%. We have seen a rally in metals this week. I really don't pay attention to metals all that often. I sat on the sideline and watched with popcorn whenever silver and gold were just absolutely ripping face earlier this year, just because I don't like trading stuff like that. I know some people they really love that level of volatility. I do not. That is far too much volatility, particularly in silver and gold, because they're not as liquid as ES or NQ. So it's like not only are they moving violently, but like I popped open silver's DOM just to see like what it was like whenever they were rallying it way up over 100, and it was like just gaps, like like full on 20 to 35 cent gaps in price, and the tick size over there is really big. So that is not, to me, like, I know some people make a ton of money doing that, but like I can't control risk. Like not only do you have to keep your stop super super far away, but then like when the liquidity is that bad, the chance of you getting uh like a ton of slippage is also really high. So no thank you. But yeah, metals are rallying this morning. What that means in terms of a broader market move, I don't necessarily read too much into that. Let me just look at a daily chart on gold, because historically if metals are going to go bid, that typically means more risk off environment, but that has kind of been, the market has been a little bit of like the upside down in regards to how it's doing that stuff. So they're back above this imbalance level here. We're also smack dab in the middle of value as well. So and let's back up to the opening range low there on NQ. I just like I don't love how much they gave back for that. But they're going to go bid here. That's up to the session mid. I'm going to watch this level if they come back on the way back down. That imbalance is at 618 and 3/4. So just because at this point, they've got it about 30 to 40 points away from that. So buyers willing to put on some risk above that imbalance level. There's another buy imbalance. So buyers getting a bit more aggressive there. I don't love that for my long idea though, because then it's like if I think about most of the time these imbalances being, resistance if you're coming up from underneath them or support if you're coming down on top of them. So I don't love now, basically, if I were to get long at like 620-ish and now it's sell imbalance. So you're starting to see some larger size start to get thrown around here. And that sell imbalance there is going to make me hesitate on taking a long here at 620 because this would be 620 to 670. So it's like just barely 2 to 1. I really like my trades to try to be 3 to 1. Or like, I would love my trades to be 10 to 1, but like I try to, when I'm looking for my targets or what I'm scalping, I want to make sure that like I kind of have a clear runway for at least 3 to 1 for points. And this one's sitting like, I would assume that this sell imbalance here tries to become resistance. So if we pull back, even if I get a really good entry and it holds here, I have traffic basically sitting, 2 to 1 risk away, which I don't like. So far, just been trading inside, like sort of like inside the levels that I've been talking about. So I said 550 was probably a magnet. It was. We pulled back. Oh, should I be looking at SPCX, SpaceX? Should I be looking at that? I don't know if I should be looking at that actually. Well, he got it above this imbalance. I'm going to poke my head up here and see how big this imbalance is here. 131 at like 70 and a half. Man, just doing a bit of a V-shaped recovery here, which I don't trade very well. Actually, I don't even say that I don't trade very well. I just don't trade Vs. I need some kind of, I need to show me price is holding. And price was holding here, but, I assumed 550 was a magnet, so I wasn't going to buy right ahead of it. Oh, you sold a little bit of SpaceX? That's smart. I like that. If you guys don't have a friend who is willing to be your unofficial and or official risk manager, I highly recommend it. You know, keep you out of a lot of from doing a lot of dumb things is just like I've been like I never was in Discord until I learned to trade futures. And then the community that I learned to trade futures in uh, was on Discord, and I've just made a lot of really good friends there. And it's one of my good friends, Wags. Like we chat back and forth throughout the day, and we kind of ping pong risk management stuff off off of each other, and it just helps. When you're like, hey, I took a stop or I'm down, X number of points or whatever. And, just to have somebody else be like, do you think maybe you should hang it up today? You seem kind of frustrated. Or you're carrying a lot of SpaceX into earnings. Do you think maybe you should shave some of that? Um, those are good things. Those are good things from good friends. Oh, the metals ETF. Yeah, that makes sense. Although I don't know if I want to be would have wanted to be trading a leveraged anything during those moves. I just like, everybody gets, and look, some people are good at trading it, so I'm not here to criticize what people are or aren't trading, but whenever you have uh whenever my mom's like messaging me being like, I see that like gold and silver, like, should we buy? No, you should not buy any. Absolutely. And thank you for giving me a sell signal. Uh like, it's when the general pop starts talking about the thing that you're trading, you are trading something that is probably incredibly volatile. So I think it was like literally, it's like amazing. And I think everything's like accelerated with social media um, in terms of the speed at which stuff moves now. But like the weekend before gold and silver made their top, there were like pictures of people in lines at banks buying gold. And I was like, I'm not, I don't trade them. It's not my asset. I stick to the NASDAQ. I know, trade what I know. But if you could have possibly had a more clear short signal than that, right? Then I don't know. You probably shouldn't be trading because it was not even like 2 or 3 days later and they just like rugged, particularly silver, you know. Gold took it on the chin too, but some of those moves down in silver were just scary. Just a scary amount of volatility. So I don't like to trade things like that because they're not, it's not typical market movement. Like those are markets that are moving in unusual and unpredictable ways. I want a market that moves in a predictable, repeatable, understandable way. And that is not what those were doing. So far, the NASDAQ just not interacting with anything for me to trade. So I'm like vaguely looking for a pullback into the 70 and a 70 and a half area, 670 and a half, uh, to see if they can hold. But instead, they held the previous day's high to a tick. So really nice hold of basically the center of this chop zone from yesterday. You know, got sellers just excited enough to take out the bottom of the data candle by 30 or 40 points and now rallying back up to the upside. So, and I'm just somebody that like, my particular setup is like, a breakthrough and a retest and hold and then go. And so far that hasn't materialized. So I will sit on my hands until I see something that's worth trading. Well, they have just gone full bid here. I want to see, I'm going to scroll up here. I'm going to scroll a little higher than prices. I want to see if there's any large orders on the depth of market. So there is 39 at 800. That's not really that big. There were a few repetitive, like 400 to 500 contract orders on the NASDAQ yesterday, but I don't see anything of that size near enough for me to care. Just look above the overnight high to see if there's anything there. Nope. Okay. I'm going to scroll my depth of market up to 800. I think that's the next sort of point of reference. Is a place that sellers held once, twice, three times. Not sure if it holds a fourth time. Not necessarily looking to short this, just I know I'm not going to be taking any trades in the middle of all of this. So I scroll my depth of market to the next place that would be like where I might be interested in taking a trade. Like I know people have like depth of market settings that will allow you to like it'll like follow the depth of market with you. But I mean, the depth of market to me already gives me anxiety to a degree. It's just something that bounces around so fast uh, that I don't need to watch it any extra if I'm not going to be taking a trade in it. Seeing a little bit of exhaustion there from buyers. That's what the little marker there is. Doesn't mean uh, doesn't mean to just jump into position there. Really just means that the move is cooling. So now if I got this and it was like maybe just above this zone, I might look to scalp that. But sitting here still kind of, the top half of the range without any real reference points here. Not going to pay attention to that too much. So that's like something we can actually like look at it different. Let me pop on. So like we have, let me just turn on a couple more exhaustion markers just for illustrative purposes, right? So we have three sitting on the chart right now. There's one right here, and then there's one right here that came in after the data drop. This signal prints live. So this is not like a, this worked in the past and you never would have seen this. This absolutely prints live. But notice that we also got one here and it worked for a minute and then buyers took off. So they are points of reference, but the only way to really like sort of detect exhaustion is to like detect exhaustive type behaviors. So the way that we detect exhaustion is we look for a really strong one directional move, both from a delta perspective as well as a price perspective. So like price is going up, buyers are hitting it super, super hard, and they've also been hitting it hard for an extended period of time. And then as soon as you get a couple of bars that cool off, so they pull back from the edge of that extreme, then you get the signal will flag. Now, there's no real way to be able to discern whether that behavior, when you get cool off behavior, whether you're going to get a 5 point pullback, a 25 point pullback, a 200 point pullback, right? So, because moves all the time go up vertically, cool off enough to flag exhaustive behavior, and then just like push again, right? Like they take a breath, they go sideways, they maybe pull back a tiny bit, and then they go off. So, as always, there's a lot of different indicators, and I hesitate to call them indicators sometimes, but signal services that are like, oh, well, like, when this pops up, you just short it. And like, please don't do that. Please don't do that. We're building a set of tools for you guys to sort of like look at the market through a particular lens using order flow. So if you had another reason to be getting short here and you took this signal, great work. We love that. Absolutely. I didn't have anything here, so I didn't take it, but um, just like to reiterate that because very, very big on using our studies for informational purposes. They're to help you see things that are like happening, underneath price that like otherwise you'd have to be watching a footprint chart really highly in detail. Um, and instead, our hope is that you can kind of glance at the chart and be like, oh, okay, buyer's in control. They got a little exhaustion up here, et cetera, et cetera. So I'm going to scroll back. I'm hoping, I don't know that they will, but I would really like a pullback. Oh, somebody else would like a pullback too. Here's 70 contracts at 680, which is also front running the level that I'm actually looking at here at 670, though there's another big buyer down here. I also turned this on, I think, on stream on Wednesday, and I forgot to turn it back off, and I've just left it since then. But probably a little bit hard to see on stream, but like my main bid colors are like this kind of cyan light blue, and then you'll see this deeper purple. So that's using MBO data, which is market by order data. So like Rhythmic, which is the data provider, actually provides platforms with IDs. So you can actually see that this is looks like basically 160 lot buyer and then one lot buyer at that price. So you can see where larger participants are actually executing, or at least putting bids on. They haven't actually executed yet, but uh, that's just like a little, if you're using Motive Wave, that setting is in bid and ask. And then at the very bottom, it says show market by order. And then I think you need to have bid, MBO fill, and ask fill. So those are there. You can also filter it. So like if you're just seeing a bunch of like one lots things, you can filter it up to a larger to like consolidate orders. But look at this cluster going on here right now. The banks are watching my stream. They see my level. Uh, if you're a bank and you're watching, please sponsor us. Wow, there's a lot of buyers showing up down here. That's like, call it 120, 270, call it roughly like 350 contracts across 12 points on NQ here, right in front of this imbalance level. So for me, I am interested, as well as the other 350 lots are interested in this particular price. It's these tops. It's a little under the previous day's high. But I will let the rest of these large participants get filled and then see what the market wants to do after that. So it's funny. My friend Wags, we talked a lot about this like years ago, and I don't remember whether we actually did any back testing, but one of the things that he observed whenever we were watching futures trade, particularly on ES, I think NQ has similar type behavior, but let's say that a big order shows up like, I don't know, 80 to 120 points away from price. It kind of has like a magnetic effect. Like the market likes liquidity, like it wants to gravitate towards larger orders, right? So you would kind of see this like drift up effect if it was close enough to price. If it's like 1,000 points from price, like maybe not so much. But as the other interesting thing that he kind of observed, and I've seen it as well, is you get this kind of magnetic effect towards the large orders. And then as price gets closer to them, right? So now you get within 10, 15, 5 points, then they can kind of become almost support in a way. Like the market hesitates in not wanting to like go through that much liquidity. So just something to sort of like, observations from someone that has watched an awful lot of price action and depth of market behavior, that I would assume that this much liquidity is going to be a bit of a magnet for the NASDAQ at the moment. Um, but then I'm also not surprised that they bounced kind of like right in front of the first few orders here at 88. Motive Wave does have a heat map study, so you can actually like show it's like a little bit like Bookmap, but not as pretty. Uh, Although I find Bookmap's idea to be pretty. Their color scheme makes me just mad. And also like Bookmap is like too, I know a lot of people use it and a lot of people really love it. And if you get on, financial Twitter or financial YouTube or any of those places, like they think it's like just you know, if you're not using Bookmap, you're not going to be profitable type thing. And I used Bookmap for a while when it first came out just because I was like curious about what it was. And it's a useful tool. I don't think that it's not, but it's just way too like just information overload for me. Just bubbles and lines and watching every tick and what time frame am I looking at? And you've got the bid and the ask, and it's a lot. All right, let's see how they react to these big orders right at this previous sell imbalance here at 70 and a half. They just pulled one of those. There you go. Filled that guy. Yeah, agreed on Bookmap. Feeling like, yeah, 100%. It's just, and like also, I know I shouldn't like get hung up on colors, but like, I'm sorry, it's ugly. It is an ugly platform. Like, I think they have so many ways they could make that thing look so much prettier. And the defaults are just like, will never get anywhere near my chart. I just I love I've worked really hard on like the aesthetics portion of Scalper IQ. Everything that we put on chart is just like a very uh like distinct and purposeful decision about making sure that things look distinctly different from each other, making sure that, they're small enough that, you can control the size of them. We give you that flexibility, that the colors are complementary to each other. Like, a lot of us stare at these things for like hours on end. So in my mind, if I'm going to stare at it for hours on end, like I also want it to look nice. So I don't think that Bookmap, um, I don't think Bookmap achieves that personally. And it can be ugly and also be a good tool, but it could be the best tool in the world, and I'm not going to be able to use it because I'm just going to be hate watching it the whole time, being like, why are these colors and graphics so bad? Basically, like a perfect hold of that imbalance level. It was like imbalance level plus a couple of big buy orders that got filled there. So let's see if they give us another look at it. Right beneath the previous day's high, right in front of session mid, a little bit in this low volume node. If I were to get long here around 70, probably just going to try to scalp it. Yeah. Like, I mean, you want to look at the high, right? But it's been so choppy that I don't know that I would look that far away. Yeah. I think we could get 80 to 90 points out of it. I think we could get back up to where they had exhaustion. So I would say first target, depending on how it is that we get there, would be 60 points. So like 730, which would be like back up to this pivot high here. But price still about 20 points away from where I'm interested in executing. Oh, now it's here. Come on. I want to see it flush just a tiny bit. There we go. Let's see if they get it back above. All right. Long here at 70. Stop is at 50. We get above 710, I'll move stop to break even. Just going to see if this imbalance holds again. Ultimate target is going to be like 730. So let me go ahead and put an offer out there. Like right in front of the session mid here, which is really just like it's a market level. It's not really like there's nothing necessarily delta or order flow related there. So what I wanted to see was that like quick, there was like a 17 to 20 point or 17 to 20 lot order that was sitting right at 70. And I wanted to see that get filled first before I got in, um, just because sometimes with exactly what it did was you get somebody that's a little bit larger than the participant that's trying to buy, and they kind of overshoot that level. Um, and so I wanted to see them get filled first, and then as soon as they got under and back above, then I put an offer or I put a bid in um, to get in there. So I like this level. If it stops us out, would be willing to try again, just because we saw a lot of big buying happening right in that area. So sometimes it doesn't always hold the first time. So we'll move stop just underneath that imbalance if we get to 710, which is right there. So I'm just going to move my stop up. So that's 40 points. I'm just going to put this at exactly 660, just OCD. I want to give it just a little bit of room if it happens to come back to try to hold that same imbalance level again. But and we're filled there. That was a really nice trade in terms of that's less me complimenting myself and more just like that is like as clean as it gets for holding that price. That is like my perfect setup there. So like you got this imbalance that happened on the way up, and then price came all the way back down to it and held it first once in front of it and then right at it, and then we got this tiny little sweep and right back above. 10 out of 10 would take that trade. That was also first, I think maybe first, we'll call it first ever responsible trade taking using 3 micros. I've traded 3 micros before, but not doing anything responsible. So that was, and it's wild. Like, I think if you were not here for the beginning of the stream, so I'm trying to teach myself how to trade larger size. So this isn't a 50K eval from Lucid Trading. But yeah, I even when I took that trade, even though like I just said, like I would 10 out of 10 take that trade again because I just like that is a really, really nice setup to me. Uh, but even then, just like the psychology of knowing that I was trading 3 contracts and like I glanced up at my P&L, which is going up 3 times faster than when I trade a single micro. Uh, yeah, I could like feel I could feel myself like being nervous or more anxious about that position. Um, so it's a win for me, not just in like the win of like the actual trade, but like still executing the same way, still waiting for my offer to get filled, not, you know, deciding to scalp it out just because there's a larger dollar figure on screen. That's the actual battle here, and to me, that's the actual battle of sizing up. Is it is still the same type of risk management, but you know, just the emotions that come with trading larger size. And in my mind, like prop firms are the perfect place to do that because your risk is really just the cost of the account, unless you're funded, in which case maybe it's different. But if you're just in an eval, I think an eval is like you have capped risk. Whatever the cost of the account is the capped risk. You know, you can find out that trading 3 micros makes you super nervous and you trade really terribly because of it. You know, if you blow the account, you're out, $70 to $100, depending on where you're at. We're also going to run stream a little bit longer today. We'll be here till like 11 to 11:30 Central Time. So just opening up some windows, kind of seeing like, I know some people like, particularly in the morning for jobs and stuff, aren't as free. I'm gonna come back down to this level again. 670 is that spot again. I probably won't take this right away. They're starting to kind of work this level. This would be the third touch of it. So I'd be more suspicious of it potentially flushing. Here they come. Held it on the nose again. This price action is terrible though. Just basically just trading around inside of the jobs report candle. Trading inside of value. Trading inside this low volume node for the week, for the weekly profile. It wouldn't be like that crazy for them to get this back up to 850 and go sideways and kind of fill this out into what could ultimately be either the point of control will be kind of a double distribution through the week, but also the first time when I took this trade, this was a bit more of a low volume node, and now they're just kind of trading inside of it, which is going to be filling this out. It just becomes choppier and less directional. And also just compression, right? Like I was probably pushing it, looking for 60 points. We basically got 60 points. Like we had our offer at 730, they got it to 732. So it was right at the edge of that rotation, kind of milked out about as many points as I could get from that. So if we start to compress even further, it makes me even less likely to take a trade in this area because I just don't want to get stuck in another choppy short rotation. Like, since I'm risking 20 points most of the time, I want to be able to see that I have a clear pathway and target to at least 3 to 1. So at least like 60 points away ish. If it's like 55 or it's 65, like I'm not necessarily like it has to be exactly 60 points, but that was about the size of these rotations that we were looking at. We got one that was slightly larger. So thank you, market, for that extra push there. But we've also seen a lot of large buyers down in this 70 area. And if they can't start getting rotations back up to take profit, then you start ending up with a bunch of sort of like trapped volume here. And if you get trapped volume, then typically a flush is nearby. Glad the setup was helpful. Familiar face that I will not call out on stream, but appreciate that you're here watching. You know who you are. Nice defense of that level again. You almost could have taken the same trade again. Um, I sometimes just feel like I sometimes just feel like I'm getting too cute. Like if I'm just taking the exact same, like it makes sense, right? Like nothing has, the only thing that's materially changed from when I got in here versus now is that we've chopped through, like we filled out this low volume node. So I'm less inclined to trade in there since we're starting to chop around back and forth. But, you know, the same buyers or a similar, buyers are still willing to step in at this imbalance level and trade it. You've now had that's 70 to call it like a 50-point rotation, a 60-point rotation, and now a little bit lower, like a 40-ish point rotation this time. So plenty of points scalping off that exact level if you're so inclined. But I also feel like when I first started like trading futures and I was like, you do what you kind of like, I think a lot of us do, which is find somebody that knows how to trade futures better than you and follow along, right? But like inevitably, I would be like watching somebody and they'd be like, I'm buying this level. And I'd be like, great, I'm going to buy the level too. And like they've already taken a trade off of it. And then I go in to buy it and it just like flushes straight through me because I'm buying like later on in support, right? Like I'm buying a level that might already have been worked over. That was incredibly frustrating to me, always being like, well, why does it work for them and not work for me? A lot of times that's why. Now just hugging the point of control for the session. This is kind of what we did yesterday, like really the best move so far in terms of like range of points was like shorting off the reoffer pre-opening range, like at like 845 central, taking this down to below the low of the data drop, and then holding in front of this. We talked about 550, holding right in front of there and all the way back up. So, but you basically got one good big rotation down and one good big rotation up. And if you took the exhaustion signal, this was also a nice pullback. That's like a solid 100 points right there. But now you're just starting to compress. And I'm being very cautious because this is what we did yesterday. And like this is how you lose money, in my opinion. You have to be very, very, very diligent about making sure that you are getting really good entries around the area that they're trying to hold. Um, I really wish that they had held this absorption area from earlier on in the session. I wish they had held that many times because that would have given me extra confidence to like take those rotations each time. And instead, I got one trade off of it, and then they never came back to trade it again. So, but I'm afraid that we may just start to compress again here. And compression is just really, really, really hard to trade. been a pretty light trading week for me in terms of execution. I couldn't find any entries on Monday and Tuesday, um, but I think I was green the other days of the week. Yesterday was tricky as well. I took that one nice trade off of that imbalance or off of that absorption level that I just showed, and that was all I did. So we'll probably, if I'm managing risk appropriately, should stay green here. That's why I love using the uh, love using that risk to reward for 3 to 1. It means I can take another trade or two and get stopped on both of those and still walk away with at least a little bit of profit. I think probably the reason that that feels good to me is I'm probably not an accurate enough trader to do 2 to 1. I think I get stopped more frequently than that. And so if that's the case, I'm going to be like at 2 to 1 risk to reward. I'm probably going to be like break even or like maybe barely profitable or barely losing. So at like 3 to 1 or higher, um, I'm able to absorb more stops. Also, I know you guys aren't taking trades right here at the point of control. So if you're not doing that, hit the like button on our stream. It helps us out for, you know, YouTube pushing our stream out so that we can get some more people and continue to kind of grow this community. So if you can find the thumbs up button, give it a press. I kind of hate that aspect of social media, right? Like it's like necessary for me to like remind people because like if I'm watching a stream that I like I'm like, oh, okay, I'll watch it, listen to it on my headphones. Don't get anywhere near the like button. But damn algorithms, uh, they don't push anything out. And like particularly like live is really dominated by like really large channels. And YouTube doesn't, in my opinion, doesn't do a lot to push smaller channels. So I think that's been one of the things since like developing Scalper IQ is like I love trading, I love developing indicators, I love back testing, I love looking at data. I do not love social media, and I don't love like the parts that are just like necessary in the current day and age of like the things you have to do. Nice push by the buyers here. You know, this has got even more points than the last time off of this exact same level. So, just talking about this level again, since we got the nice trade off of it, but like a couple of things that like don't show up on the chart that was nice confluence for that trade was there was a bunch of big buyers around 670. We saw like 300 to 400 lots live that were all bidding in like 50 to 60 lot increments. And it was mostly just one large, I don't know about if each order was large participant, but the orders were separate. So we could see that like it was like somebody with a lot of size trading in those rather than like 61 lot orders. So that gave me um, a little bit of extra confidence that somebody else saw what I saw, and was also the session mid and wasn't in balance. So some of those things like you're only going to be able to see if you happen to be like watching the stream at this exact point in time. Doesn't mean that it's just like, I could go back and like doodle on the chart and tell you that there was a bunch of big buyers here, but it's harder to see. And like this is another reason we like our impact levels because once price is traded through here a couple of times, like it can get a little muddy to know what that initial imbalance level was. So one thing I'm thinking about here is, I'm just going to scroll up to see. There's a big order here at 2,800. It's like 73. It's like a mix of sized participants. You can see this is kind of like how market by order works, right? Like there's 73 total, which the 73 might be kind of hard to read there with that font, but the like orange, red are all different sized orders inside that same block. So it's not just one participant, but a few large participants. Just looking up a little higher, up into this zone. One thing to think about for a potential reoffer in this zone, which they've held a couple of times, is that the exact midpoint of that zone is the exact like edge of value for the NASDAQ right now. And the opening range high is just like barely above it. So how I would trade this if we look to maybe fade this, because I think we've spent so long inside the opening range and we broke the opening range low first, which is usually just indicative that, sellers have a little bit of an edge there, statistically speaking. Like whichever side gets broken first typically has the edge. That just is kind of like, I don't always know how useful that stat really is because, like, of course, if the lower side of the range gets broken, it's more likely we're going to go lower, like, kind of one of those sort of like duh stats. But we spent a lot of time inside the opening range. We broke the opening range low first. We took out the bottom of the data candle. We've chopped around a bunch in the middle. I just wonder if we get up here, how I would probably play this is like let it push through, maybe take out the opening range high. You see there's a big order that just showed up here at 8:30 while I was talking. Uh so like fill some of this liquidity and get back underneath the zone and back into value and like short the backside of that rather than like I particularly don't want to be short now above 800 if this big order is still here. We talked about liquidity magnets a little bit ago, like 100 contracts on the NASDAQ, like 10 or 15 points from price is gonna be a magnet. So like I feel like this happens to me a lot and ultimately doesn't matter because I was looking for 60 points and I got 60 points, so can't be mad, but like the second move is just going a lot further. It wouldn't have mattered because I had an offer at 30, so it would have already been going past me, but just noting that like I was like, oh, a lot of times I don't take you know, the second hold of the same level, in this case the third hold, and the market's like, watch this. So the next area that I'm looking like interested in trading is like, let's see if they can fill this big order if they get up that high. And not like ultra bearish, just the way the session is developing with like all the volume being done like right in the middle here. And this would be the edge of value. And we've already taken out the opening range low. I'm more inclined to think that we'll pop some stops, grab some liquidity, and drift back down towards 720 for the rest of the session. But if we had like come out with momentum, I would have been like, oh, weekly high slash this triple top that we've talked a lot about back here from early July. I think that would have just like made a lot of sense to like sort of like head towards that after the data drop. But I think that buyers just like gave back too much of that. So if they can get momentum above this big order above 830, maybe. But that high is still like 200 points away, over 200 points away from this order. So that would be, I haven't seen that kind of momentum here just yet. Also remember that our opening range was like not even 200 points. And like the reason that that matters is the opening range is like typically is like kind of like used as a benchmark for the level of volatility that we're experiencing, right? So like a 400 point opening range means the market is like we're really moving around pretty quick on the Nasdaq. Uh Under 200 is like just kind of average-ish. It's not like super low, but it's definitely not on the higher side. And so when I'm thinking about how far things are away, like we talked about this level just a second ago, like 30,064. So that's 300 points away from price. That's like almost triple the distance of the opening range right now. That would be 3 extensions. So like if you take the opening range and stacked it 3 times on top of itself, that would be 3 extensions of the opening range. Uh, that'd be a pretty outsized move. It's not to say that it can't do it, but that would be a pretty outsized move for the current level of volatility right now. Anybody have any fun weekend plans? Still abysmally hot here in Texas. I'm hoping to go for like a nice long bike ride or run sometime this weekend, but it's gonna have to be before like 11 a.m. Otherwise, it's just like riding in an inferno. Also, I know a couple of people that are in here, but I don't know where everybody's based in. Look at that reoffer of that exact same price. Solid 40-point pullback off of that same level of exhaustion right there. And just for like how I trade, like I wasn't looking to short this here, but this to me is easier to take. Like we already saw exhaustion here once, and then we come up to the same price and get stuck. That's an easier trade for me to take than just the print of exhaustion and then just like get in just because the signal printed. So as I said earlier, like I want to see not only see exhaustion if that's what I'm looking for, but like I need to see something like something else lined up with. And at that time, I didn't see anything else. Now, if we get up here, we take out this big order at 8:30, trade around a little bit, and then print exhaustion up here, that's a little more exciting to me. I've had a bad habit in the past, and it has cost me a lot of money and effort, like trying to be the first person into trades, like trying to guess where exhaustion is going to be or just jumping into stuff that like hasn't settled. Like you get a spike up and it's like, yeah, you can get a spike up and then an immediate rollover. It does it all the time. But I just, for the number of times that I was able to catch like a local top or a local bottom, I was getting stopped out like 5 or 6 times by the time I actually caught the thing. So I'd end up either like small red and really frustrated or just red. Uh, and then ultimately sometimes watch price go and do the thing that I wanted it to do. And I was just like way too early to the party. So I've been a lot happier just trading and like making it so that like I'm okay missing it, right? Like if this had come back here and just put in a higher low at like 80, I wouldn't have taken the trade. I've just been like, oh, okay, I'll look for something else. So I think a lot of traders get themselves in an inordinate amount of trouble, uh, like not waiting for like, oh, like price bounced 5 points in front of my order. Okay, well then wait, don't move it up 5 points. Now your stop is 5 points higher too. If you're trading, if you're using risk management. This was a tricky week though. Just vertical up on Monday and Tuesday. Got a little bit of a pullback on Wednesday, and then it just kind of chopped around for the rest of the time. I think like overall productive week for the buyers if they can continue to hold it up here. I think that puts like 30,000 easily in their sights going into next week. But just a little different feel of that, like when we had that crazy rally off the lows in like March, April of this year, like there were almost no pullbacks and all of that. That was just like every day it was up like 2%. So this one started that way and now kind of getting stuck. One thing to look at, if you're trading with Scalper IQ, like one of the things that I look at, I didn't take this second trade because I'd already taken one rotation, but when you get this push up and it rotates the candle color from like selling color over to buying color, and then when we pull back and it never like actually rotated over to the uh it never rotated over back to the sell color. You got like neutral, but still with like I'm using blue for my buy color, but like a little bit of a tint. It means that the buyers were more aggressive and pushing more volume on the way up. And now on the way back down, sellers are not doing the same. So that could give you a little bit of extra confidence to take that trade here. Uh, I did not. I'm going to pay the price for not taking it a second time, but that's just a added way to kind of like interpret the candle coloring for Scalper IQ. Let's see if anything in the broader market is doing anything exciting. NASDAQ kind of just churning here. Nothing really too exciting. Nvidia is back up 2.25% again, so that's probably driving a lot of the price action. That's a pretty like unbelievable move for Nvidia off of their 200-day moving average. Their 200-day moving average is like 195-ish, and they're trading at 223. It's a solid 10% move. Kind of a hot mix of everything else that's up though. I don't know if Intel finally caught a bid. Um, yes. Not a lot of one, but it put in a higher low, is trying to go higher. So you have like Nvidia kind of trying to pull up the NASDAQ, but there's not like a lot of other big tech names. Amazon is up just about 2%. Meta is up 1%. Below that is all mostly like flat or slightly red. Slow, slow, slow. And this is kind of what I was talking about a few minutes ago, that I'm just like, I don't like up near 30,000 is like an obvious target, but I don't think the volatility and the volume is there to get us up that far unless something changes. I mean, you're always a headline away from the volatility picking up, but so far, pretty slow from both sides. So they're getting up close to this 800 level. I'm not really looking right at 800. Um, it is edge of value right with the bottom of this zone and this previous top here, but this 100 lot order here at 830 makes me think that they might push it a little bit further through that. So will not be taking a short trade or looking to fade the edges of this if we get up here and it looks like it's having some struggles, but not just going to sit in the way of it because I think the buyers are going to get this. I think they're going to get it up through the high, to be honest with you. Here they come. They've had 1, 2, 3 tests of this area. This would be the 4th. This is just so clean for how I love to trade imbalance levels. Like, I know I took one trade off of that and I'm happy about that, but this is, I really wish that I was long again, obviously with it up much higher than where I took profit before, but that's just like, oh, so good. And there's different ways to trade these levels. Um, I particularly like to see them print and then come back and test them and hold. But like when you got this one here, this is another way to trade them, is just like a momentum break above it and then stop back on the other side. I don't particularly like that quite as much. I kind of assumed that like, in this case it would have worked, but also the first time that it tried and almost touched it, like it sold right back off. So if I was really going to try to take this, I'd probably want to see it like, back up to the opening range low and then come back and test and hold and go. This like momentum break is not really my style. So that's up. We're now out of value and trading into this delta zone here at 800. And like I've said, there's this big order that's sitting here at 30, just on the other side of the opening range high. So I give that more weight than I give, sorry, I give the opening range high less weight than I do the 100 lot order here on the other side. Yep. And they actually just created a new delta zone when they did that. And that's why I don't just sit on the offer. Wow. And there's through the opening range high. And I assume that this person with the 100 lot order is just hoping that momentum is going to carry it up through there, which looks like that's going to be the case. You can see a bunch of sellers stacking here too. There's like 9s, 10s, 12s, 13s, 10s, 8s. So all front all front running the bigger order here at 30. And they just barely popped it through the high. They're going to try to come up to this price here. Maybe it's just my color theme, but like for some reason this reminds me of like a beehive. Like there's just like all these like little tiny like stacks showing up. And actually like it's a decent amount of volume leading up to this 30 order. It's just dwarfed in size by the 100. A little slow to come up to it though. It's kind of like what we talked about earlier on stream is that like can be a bit of a magnet from far away, and then when they get close to it, like market's kind of waiting to be like, does anybody really want to buy that much at the exact high? Which I think they do. Not much in the overall session profile until you get to, there's a little tiny volume node there at 40, which is just past this order. I am interested in fading this up here, but I need to see them take this big order first and trade up here a little bit. Probably look for some kind of pullback to, like I need to see some selling come off of this area first and then see if they re-offer the same price. I'm not just going to step in front of it. You know, because if they get momentum here, then like the overnight high, which is like about another like 100 points, 120 points away, becomes like a very obvious target. So we'll see if we find a little bit of resistance here after they fill this order, if they fill this order. So my sequence would be something like pop it up, take this big order, maybe trade up near this little node here, and then like pull back and get below the opening range high and below this zone. Maybe just like call it like back below 800. Like if they lose 800, then I might look to see if they come back up to test the opening range high. And if they hold it there, I would look to potentially fade that back down towards 720. There goes that. So you see that imbalance show up as they took that 30 lot order and it went straight to 40 with speed and size. So no shorting for me. Let this settle in. Wow. That really picked up in speed. I don't know if that's just the high break or if there might be a little headline juicing going on there too. I didn't see anything else in the calendar, but it doesn't mean that like there's not another Fed speaker going on somewhere. Nope. The rest of it's oil related stuff, not really related to equity markets. So just volatility and volume from the high break is all it is. See a little bit of weakness on that push. They have a very obvious target. Like if you're taking that break, or if I was taking that break, like I would be looking for the high. I mean, that's just the most obvious place to look for things. Getting a little stuck here at 40. And obviously very able to be wrong here, happens all the time. The reason I'm not so interested in a long is because of the the low volatility that we've had, the small opening range, and we're pressing outside of value right now. We haven't done enough volume up here. We've done a ton of volume down here at 700, and then on a weekly basis, we've done even more volume on like 500. So I'm not willing to like step in front of this and like, try and catch the top. But I do think that buyers are going to find some. I just don't know that they have big enough guns today to get this meaningfully higher or like up to challenge 30K. They get it through the overnight high, then I think 30K becomes a very obvious next target. But like that is a long ways away in terms of like relative to how we've traded so far. So there's some exhaustion. So that's kind of the first sign that my idea about potentially fading this might be a thing. But I still need to see enough of a sell move come off this level before I'm willing to step into it. Like exhaustion is just a fancy word for cooling off. It doesn't mean, you know, that we're about to drop 100 points. We could be. If I don't get filled on the short side, we're definitely going to drop 100 points. It's just the rules of the universe there. Yeah, we really want to get under for like a short idea. We really want to get underneath this imbalance and have it start using it as resistance. Um, And so this might be a really good example. I don't know that I'll be able to get into a trade here, but like this might be a good example of like how I want to trade you know, a particular area, right? So like I've talked about potentially wanting to fade the edge of this, but like if we only pull back like 15, like whatever, call it 30 points, like if I want to get 60 and I've only seen a 30-point pullback, what makes me think I'm going to get 60 the next time I get in, right? So like I need to see that sellers are willing to sell off of this level, and then I need to see them come back up and defend it again. If we just dump off of this level and go right back into the opening range, like, and don't come back up to retest, like I just won't be a part of the trade. But so far I've seen a few things that are making me think we could fade here. We saw a little bit of negative delta on the push to get higher. That's that little orange orb here. We had a big buyer that got filled here and didn't get continuation. We got a delta extreme right here at the top, and we got an exhaustion marker printing, which means that we're cooling off. And now they can't seem to get it back above the 830 level where that big buyer got filled, or I should say big seller got filled by a big buyer. So, but what I haven't seen, the last piece of my kind of like puzzle, is I haven't seen a lot of like aggressive selling coming in to here. And that's the piece that I'm missing to want to get short here. Like I want to see them come and almost lose and or lose 800 and then come back up to this level. Otherwise, they get it back above this imbalance level, and I think buyers are apt to want to try to defend that price. So I find that having like a sequence of things that I'm looking for, you're kind of like building a case as to why you want to put risk on, right? And I've seen a few things, but not all the things. And so if I haven't seen all the things and I have a list of things I want to see first, then that keeps me from just like, oh my gosh, like I need to short 830. Why do I not have an offer out? Why am I not in position? Right? Like you don't got to be first. But they're not cleanly getting it back above 830 right now. They're kind of working that level. So still not pulling back far enough. And the thought process behind that is like right now they're just holding the opening range high, right? Which is like 820. I don't want to be short at 830 with something that buyers are stepping in 10 points away on. Now, if buyers lose it and we go back down closer to 800 and then come back up, then I'm a little more interested in that. But that's kind of the thought process is like if I was short right now, my concern would be, I'm only 10 points in the money and they're holding they're holding the price pretty close to where my entry is, and they've held it a few times. And the opening range high is like it's a known reference point. Like the 30-minute opening range is extremely popular for people to trade. So even if there's not any like order flow, signals at the opening range high, it's a place that a lot of market participants are looking at. And if it like does all of this, it holds the opening range high and off it goes, then I don't have to take a short stop, right? My risk is that if they sell it down to 800 and come back up to this imbalance level and I get short and then they pop it through, there's not anything I can do about that, but I just like that play better. But I can stay out of an inordinate amount of trouble by just waiting for a handful of things to happen without clicking buttons. Also know that when I'm saying these things, I'm half coaching you guys or, giving you my insights on things and half coaching myself to not go doing things that I don't shouldn't be doing. Uh, Self-talk during trading, I think, is like very healthy and important. All right, pulling back a little further here, they flushed back into the opening range just barely. But also notice like we're still pulling back on the bicolor, right? And we already talked about that like if sellers aren't rotating this color back over, and it's not the color itself that's moving obviously, but like the color is based around volume and delta. So like if sellers are pulling this back and we're sticking to the same type of color, then it makes me think that sellers aren't getting that aggressive. That's a bit better though. See if they lose 800. Yeah, gonna lose 800. All right, so now we're interested if they can get price back up here, so like 830-ish to potentially re-offer that. So 830 stop would be 850, which is actually really nice. You would have this delta zone and some of these like quick little wick tops that they were holding 40 on, but not going to chase it down. But basically at this point, I've gotten all the different parts of the sequence that I wanted to see. We wanted to see the big order get filled. We saw some signs of exhaustion slowing down. We saw a little bit of negative delta on the high. We see this imbalance level that they tried to hold and now they lost. So the last piece is, will they give me a look at an entry? Man, when I first started trading futures, I think I've mentioned before, and I traded the opening range like very mechanically because I just had like no idea what I was doing. And so I would just be like, oh, broke the opening range high, right? And just like buy it on like the first push through. And then like on days like today where like, I wasn't looking at the overall picture, I wasn't looking at volatility, I wasn't looking at volume, I wasn't looking to see how big rotations were. I was just like, if it goes through that line, I'm buying it, right? Or if it's going through that line, I'm selling it. And oh, I got chopped to pieces. It was so painful. It was so frustrating, you know. So really, like if you're gonna trade the opening range high breaks, I think like the way that those have been back tested traditionally to like see whether it works over like a long, because it does have edge. Um, every year is a little bit different, and there's different ways to go about trading it. But I think one of the more common ways to trade it would be you have your opening range high, you have your opening range low, and then you have a mid price in there. So like I'm not going to do all the math here, right? Like our opening range is roughly, call it 200 points, right? So like 750-ish to 740-ish is about your opening range mid, and that's where your stop would be on the other side of the mid. So you're really trying to catch a bunch of momentum back up to the upside without like a really strong deep pullback. That's kind of the quote unquote proper way to trade the opening range breaks to avoid getting chopped to pieces when it does stuff like this. But uh I just like could never put on that much risk. That just wasn't my like I like running a tighter stop and looking for closer targets than that. Because your stop would have to be like 70 points ish, which is like not a small amount of risk. Also, I'm going to go off camera for just a moment, guys. I'll be right back. All right. I was like, if I go take a bathroom break, what are the chances that they come up and tag my level? Extraordinarily high, typically. Get your best trade setups when you're not in front of your screens. Also, my conviction on this is like, call it medium, you know. I I'll take the trade like if we come up and they struggle to get this back above 30 again. But I'm probably not going to take it multiple times. Like it's getting close to lunchtime. Like, and when I say lunchtime, I mean market lunchtime, where it's just like lower volume. Um, it's always really annoying. Like I used to live in New York up until about 3 years ago, and so like you know lunchtime there also corresponded with like actual lunchtime market, and now um I'm an hour behind. So it was like in New York, I'd be like, I could keep myself out of trouble because I'd be like, all right, it's 11:30. I'm gonna go find lunch here in like 30 minutes or so, right? And the market wouldn't do anything good while I was gone most of the time. Now you'll see that I don't have, like, I'm not sitting here with an offer, and that's because I haven't seen how price is going to come back up to this level. And these are always the things that can, play out in a way that makes it so that I don't get filled. But like, I need to see if you watched me take the earlier trade for the long, which was right here. There was a big order that I waited to get filled, so they flushed it, and then they got right back above the level. We don't have a big order to work off of here this time. There's just like 12 contracts here at 30, which is really not anything. Uh, but yeah, I would wait for a pop above 30, get back, like trade it a few times, right? And if they're still struggling, then I'll join the sell party. But if they're not, I want to stay away from them just like ripping this back through up towards 40 again. It's like it doesn't just matter that the price trades, it matters how it gets there. You see some big offers coming out here though. That's nice. My three micros are not going to take down the not going to take down the market. So I want to see some larger participants also interested in selling the same level that I'm interested in. All right, so that's back above 30, but holding it above. Let's see. Just kind of slow. Right, and that's what I'm like. I know it's so hard to describe on screen. Some of this is just because it's discretionary, but so far they just kind of like drifted it through 30 and now we're trading above it. Like you didn't see like a tag of 30 and then like immediately sell back down like 5 or 10 points and then come back to it. You're just kind of like slowly grinding back up. So still interested in the trade, but that's why you haven't seen me click a button yet. Because they're also like already like 10 points from where my stop would be. So let's see them get this back under 30 again. And if they get it back up over like 55 or back up near the high at 60, I would need to wait again to see it trade back under like, 810 or something like that. Like I'm not going to catch it. Like if they get it to 60 and then they just like spike it back down through 30, like I'm probably not going to catch it cuz At that point, I would be like, buyers are starting to hold this above the opening range high, and they might try to hold this in balance. So let's see here. There's a rejection of that zone. So right now, they're every time they come back to 30, you're having some buyers step in. So I don't want to be shorting that just yet. I want the opposite. I want it under 30 with sellers stepping in. So that's better. All right. Might not catch it. Somebody put a big order in there right as I hit the sell button, and they ran away from it. But we have an offer here at 30. Stop is at 50. Stop is not at the high because my assumption is if they get it that close to me, they're probably just going to take it. And that's just rude. That's just rude to let me put my offer in and then do that. Fun. If it gets to 800, I'm going to pull this and then we'll wait for it to come back up. So I can just like observe the behavior at 30 again. I think I would have gotten filled right as I put in that order. I think they already pulled it themselves. Maybe they're the ones that like sold it in. So I'm going to cancel everything for now. Just didn't get filled there. But like I saw it go back under 30 and then I put in my offer, and right as I clicked the DOM, somebody offered like 30 contracts at 34, and I think it just like spooked the buyers there, and they just ripped it down. So still interested in potentially shorting this price. Now you have a rotation over to the sell color. So if we can kind of drift back up without like rotating to the buy color, that's like almost an even better setup than the retest. But this is like part of the process for reading order flow, right? Is like what behavior is going on in a general range. So I've kind of talked through this trade now for the last like 15 or 20 minutes, but this is kind of like what's going on inside my head as I'm taking or not taking positions. And I don't want to like, it got away from me, but I don't want to be short at 20 because then that puts my stop at 40, which is not on the other side of this zone, which I'd like to use as defense. So not going to be chasing that down, even if I think I'm right about direction. They're going to give me another look at it. Do I want it if they're going to give me another look at it? Because they've now also held basically right at 800 twice. So target for this would be probably looking for 60 points ish again, maybe 70. Would probably look to where like the beginning of this move happened, like this little low volume node. See how we trade when we get there. But given that they've held 800 a couple of times, if I do get short at 30, I'll probably move my stop in on a break below 800, just on the outside chance that they decide to bounce it again. And whatever like 30 contract person that front ran me, hats off to you for getting there first, but rather annoyed. But notice the color of the candles. Like if we can come back up on this like weaker push back up, that makes me like this trade actually even more than the first time. So So another reason that I really like to run a tight stop is I feel like it makes me be way more patient. And because if you're running a 20-point stop on the NASDAQ, like you are going to get punished every single time that you chase something, almost every time. So I know I do all the time. Like old Zack would be like, oh, now it's holding 20. I'm going to short that there. And then it would spike back through the imbalance level that I actually wanted to be shorting. And then I would be frustrated and it would go without me. So going to leave old Zack in the past where he belongs. And at the end of the day, like if this rolls over, it's a nice read that I just like didn't get filled on. It's fine. I'd rather be right on read and not a part of it than wrong on read and a part of it. So not really so interested in buying a long pullback just because I think that like the first place that I see that it might try to hold is like this little what would kind of be our target for a short, is like around 750-ish. And then you have the point of control here. So it might just like slowly drift backwards. So honestly, the long might be like longing here off of 800. They seem to be determinedly holding that price. I'll be here for like another like 20 to 30 minutes to see if they can trade this level again. Otherwise, wrap it up for the Friday. Start the weekend. So just with how many times they've held 800 here, my stop will absolutely be at break even if we touch 800 if I happen to be short from 30. And the other reason to like not chase things like this is like the sellers are up here and the buyers are down here. If you're chasing this down into 800, you're just chasing it down into support. So you got to wait. That's back up to 820 for a moment, getting stuck at the opening range high now. It's like opening range high and edge of value. So sellers getting a little more frisky here. I obviously would like to get my entry, but this might have been one of those ones just kind of didn't play out. I got front run. That's what happened. That's what I'll blame it on. I would not be shorting into 800 right now, though. I might be wrong, but like buyers are diligently holding that price. Oof. It's like a quick tag of 96 and right back above. Yeah. Like they're holding it hard enough to like make me question whether I actually want to be short at 30. I want to see if there's anything in particular that they're holding. Yeah, just like a bunch of like large delta here at 800. You see all of these. They might not necessarily be imbalances. It might be two-way trade, like scalper isn't flagging it there, but this is like a good example. I'm not about to get long here, so ignore that my cursor shows that when I'm pointing things out. But like that's kind of what buying like looks like is just underneath the level and then immediately back above, right? and below and immediately back above. So go back and look at my 30 level. They're going to give it to me. So I think I mentioned on Wednesday, we're going to start doing some short YouTube series that will go over like reading the DOM, like a lot of the things that I talk about on stream, just in a like slightly more refined, hopefully educational manner. Because I just feel that there's not a lot of people that actually like it surprised me when I first the person that I like learned to trade futures from like looked at the DOM and talked about order flow, and so that obviously built my foundation there. But I'm just always surprised that I see a lot of people like not even trade with a price ladder. Like I know NinjaTrader in particular is like really heavy like chart trading, so is TradingView. I actually don't know that TradingView has a depth of market that works anyway, but um, and NinjaTrader highly questionable depth of market. Um, I really like NinjaTrader as a platform almost as much as I love MotiveWave as a platform. Slight edge to MotiveWave just because I started trading in MotiveWave first, but I really like Ninja's like it's clean, it's fast for the most part. I think it's a like really good platform, but their depth of market is unusable to me. So if I at some point I will probably do a stream on using NinjaTrader, um, but probably not uh, until I get like a my own separate depth of market reading from a different feed, or like have Motive Wave up and watch that. It's a little annoying, but like I'll chart trade in Ninja because I literally cannot handle their depth of market. But at some point I will trade Ninja on stream because I actually, like I said, I like the platform. Just that one that one piece, which is a thing that I use a lot looking for entries and for how I execute. So I might be too late to look at this. They might break it right as I say, hey, look at this. But let's just watch how this is trading around 800. I'm going to stay down here until they can get it back up close to 30, and then I'll go back up. But they have just kind of created this wall here at 800, which I also kind of like for the idea of shorting again, because sometimes the market needs to like get like a quick pop up and then like get a little momentum to come down to actually break this level. So I would like to be a part of the short side of that. Just every time I scroll down here, I was going to try to show you guys like what this looks like when they're trying to hold a specific price like this. And instead, they're just going to run back up to where I'm trying to get short. Let's see. How are we going to come up to this? There's a few bigger offers, nothing crazy. There's like an 11, a 12, there's a 10, and a 14. I'll like zoom back just to see what they're trying to hold here. I guess they're kind of trying to hold these tops from, but like 800 is kind of a random-ish price. Like it's not cleanly holding these tops, and it's too far away to be holding these. It's kind of just holding in this like, you see this like this up move that we did, which is just kind of like somebody just basically sitting on the buy button. So they just kind of picked like the halfway point in between that to start holding. So, and there's a bunch of like big buy delta right at 800. So, but you don't want to argue with the market when it decides to try to hold a price. And of it like not interested in being long there because as I've said, I want to get like 3 to 1, which would be like up towards the high, but I'm interested in shorting 830, so I have no business being long. No interest in being long if I've got resistance sitting right above. And every time I like try to get cute and I'm like, oh, I'll long 800 and then I'll sell it at the place that I want to get short, it'll like not quite get to the place that I want to be short. All right, so coming up a little slowly, can see the depth of market not moving around too crazy. Coming up a little slowly here to 830, which is good for us. Or good for this idea. Still hasn't traded back above 30 though. They also might have a little bit of short fuel from everything that just got absorbed there at 800. They just traded 30 exactly. See if we can get through just a little bit. I don't want it to be quite that clean. I want to see like a little pop. So far they've touched 30 twice here on this move up. Ah, may have missed that one again. Like they just traded the exact price. So it's just tricky, tricky, tricky. People are watching my levels. If you're at Chase Bank and you're watching my stream, please make a donation. Come on, buyers, give me a little oomph. Not too much oomph though, just a little bit of oomph. Here they come again. Come on. See if there's any larger orders higher. There's like 15, 13, 15. Nothing too big. Still waiting. I have a sneaking suspicion this is going to get away from me, but we'll see. They're just so slow to come up into 30, which I like, but I need to see them get it just a little bit. I need to see like a little pop. Just like I need enough buyers to kind of get trapped trying to get it back over this imbalance level. Because I'm afraid if I just like do it right before that, I'm going to get in right before this tries to pop. We're also kind of flagging up here too. It's worth noting. You got big push up and now you're just kind of like holding above 800, trying to hold above 800 and just kind of making lower highs each time. So you're just kind of compressing up here. So, this could easily compress, 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 and then get a quick extension to the upside too. Very aware that that could be coming. So back to 800. So let's see if, like when we're down here, every time I scroll my DOM down here, they bounce it. I just want to watch 800 trade. But it's like every time I come down here, they go back up to where I want to be offering at 30. Really getting like range and like speed volatility compression up here. Things have slowed down a lot. That probably favors, honestly, that probably favors the buyers a bit more. Like if you're not having initiative sellers up here. All right, so we're going to come into 800 on my screen now. There's a couple of buyers, bigger buyers stacked at 800 if they want it. I would both love and hate if this holds because like it would be a really clean setup, but obviously like I would like to be a part of it. And I just don't know that that's gonna, it's just a little too clean. Like it feels like one of these times they're gonna get through 800. They're gonna flush it a bit more. So kind of watch how price behaves here, right? So they just got it under 800. You got buyers willing to push it right back over. See the bid refilling there. So they're really trying to hold it here and then a little more initiative off. Okay, and now they're below. Do they get it right back above? Yep. It's like if this is a place that I wanted to get long, I would probably be long already, to be honest. Um, there is just persistent buying happening right beneath 800. So if you happen to be watching the DOM, this is what buying looks like at a particular level. And you see held again. So I'm going to go look back up at my 30 level. Just kind of nasty range compression here. Just going to frustrate both sides. Like I'm frustrated that I didn't get filled the first time I put an offer in. But like probably less frustrated than if I was still short from almost 30 minutes ago and we haven't moved. They're really not lying when they're like, one of the like tricky things about trading is just like, it's boring. Like when it's just doing this, it's just boring. Just waiting for something else that's tradable to sort of like materialize. It was funny on Monday and Tuesday. I went and poked around on a couple of like live streams when we were just like going vertical up this week. And not only was it like vertical up, but then it was like vertical up and just sort of like grind. Like once it like you had the initial sort of like pop, it just like kind of like was like up and to the right, just like two solid trend days, right? And like almost all the live stream people were just like so bored because nobody knows how to trade it when it's just like going vertical. Um, Everybody's waiting for a pullback that doesn't ever come. So it was kind of funny to poke my head into a few rooms and see what was going on. Wow, this is pretty gross. Back down to 800 again. I'm not even going to bother to scroll down there and look again. This will be the time that it breaks through. And as I talked about, like I don't want to be long there as they kind of flush it just a little bit there. I don't want to be long there because I'm concerned about the resistance on the way back up. Like I think it's a great support level, but I don't like what's going to get in the way if I'm long on the way back up. So that's like half the battle. I should be short right now, but I didn't get filled. So that's just the way that it plays out there. I got front run by a 30 or 40 lot order that didn't get filled and then dumped it into the bid right as I put my offer in. But there will be no crying in the casino, as they say. So now they've lost 800. I will scroll back down here now. So now they're trading underneath 800. Wow. I don't know what that is, but that's some kind of news. So we are hands off the steering wheel there for a moment. I'll still go look at my 30 level, but I will not be touching the depth of market while that's happening. I don't have a news feed up, so who knows? If I had to guess, it's probably a tweet, but you know, I'm sure that was rather painful for someone who just shorted the break below 800. Basically got like 15 points below it and then just rocket shipped back up to 20. There's like a gif, I can't remember what movie it's from, but it's like a little like blue Smurf guy that like is opening a present and then it like blows up in his face and he like tips over. I'm like, yeah. If you trade the Nasdaq, that happens to you at least once a week. Well, well. This was a nice short here. I would be taking profit right now, so probably not looking at that idea anymore. Uh, we were looking to get to 60, which it's like most of the way there. Probably will get there if I had to guess. So, you know, tried to get filled here, pulled our offer because we got like 30 points away from it, which is just like a 30 to 40 points away from it, which is just kind of a rule of mine. I don't want to like have my offer still sitting here and then like have it price run like momentum style back up through. Like I want to see that price trade again. And so when we got up here to 30, it just like traded so slow and like wouldn't pop through. And I wanted to see like a quick pop to 35 or to 40 and then get back under. Kind of play out this sequence here again, just like on a lower way. And it just traded perfect. Like it just traded exactly to that imbalance level. I think it printed 30 and then rolled over. And then there's whatever this news pop is that's rolling things over. So was a nice setup. Tried to get filled. Ultimately would have been filled. And I think I said, I was like, oh, if we're short here at 30 and we get to 800, I'm going to put my stop to break even. And I might have gotten stopped by like almost to the tick if I had done that. So few ways that could have gone wrong. The first place I would look for support for this on the way back is like 750 to like 735-ish. But my concern with taking that trade, if it was going to try to bounce, is the point of control is right below. So I would think it's more likely it tries to fall through this low volume node and go back to the point of control. So that was a 60 point. We would be out there. So I'm no longer looking at shorting this trade. That was a decent analysis on my part and just unlucky execution that time. And now all those 800 buyers are having a real bad time. I'm going to zoom out just to look at the session a little bit. So pretty large rotations from the low, right? So like relatively speaking, but like 560, it's like a 200 point rotation. Then we basically put in a higher low and did another 200 point rotation. So the last pullback, if you're like kind of measuring pullbacks here, was like 780 to so like 120 points. So 120 points off of 860 would be like 740, which is like right where they're at right now, which is also kind of a spot that we said it might hold. So if they're going to keep, the selling is about as intense as it was for these other pullbacks, which this is a little more directional, right? That's a little more vertical than what we had here. But that would put you around 7, right? Basically right where it's at right now. I'm so annoyed I didn't get that short. Would have taken like 0 heat whatsoever. Wow. So there's some kind of news, something that's going on right now. So just be aware. Trading extremely fast and in one direction. Seeing a little bit of weakness on that last push there. That's the flag of that orb from our phantom study. But I would not be stepping in front of that. It looks like it wants to go back to the previous day's high. That is a solid puke. Solid puke. So like for me, talking about this short that we're unfortunately not a part of, but this has a lot more to do with day type for me in terms of why I was looking for a short up here. We just spent so much time inside the opening range. We broke the opening range low, we chopped around in the middle, and then we just kind of like drifted up through the high, right? Like here's your opening range high at 820. They got it about 30-ish points above with a very obvious like take out the overnight high target that they couldn't get anywhere near. And then it was pullback, lower high. We saw no momentum as they came back up to 30, unfortunately, because I needed a little bit of that to get into this. But that's kind of the reason I was looking to be short up there, is just volatility pretty low, We didn't get very far through the opening range high. They re-offered it not too long after, and then everything just kind of like slowed down. Like you didn't see a bunch of buyers kind of like FOMOing in to try to like push this higher, or like, even these bids off of 800, like they just couldn't get it above, 30 points. And, you know, what ends up happening is like everybody's piling in and getting long at this 800 level. And then when it can't go far enough for all these people to start be taking profits, and you start making lower highs and you start making lower highs, then you just kind of get this pressure valve, which is in this case helped by, to me, what looks like news of some kind. I don't know. I don't trade news, but I know what the depth of market looks like when there's a headline out, and that was very headline-y. Maybe it's a anti-peace deal again on a Friday afternoon. That would be fitting, although they've seemed to have done a very good job of trying to make it so that they let the market close first, but the market might be getting wise to that behavior. Be like, I'm just going to go risk off at like noon on a Friday so that I don't have to hold through whatever nonsense is happening in the Middle East over the weekend. Seems like a reasonable thing to do. Flagging a little bit of exhaustion there. I'm not going to trade this in the middle of the range. I'm probably done for the session. That was, I wanted to be short up there and didn't happen. We caught a nice long trade on the way up, but it's going to take another like 20 or 30 minutes for this to, I think, set back up to something, and ultimately we just kind of like fell back into the middle of the range. It's kind of boring. Kind of boring. So if any of you caught this and any of you weren't short near the top, well done. Well done. I wish I could have partied with you. So they're trying to hold in front of the previous day's high here at like 686 on the NASDAQ. Let's go see if they actually want to hold that level. I'm not going to be trying to get long here. You can see a bunch of buyers stacking in this area. They just flushed right through that. I don't know. Did anybody else see a headline? You can feel free to throw it in the chat. Doesn't really matter to me in the sense of like what it is, but I assume that there's some kind of headline going on. A very, very aggressive move down. Would be very, very careful touching this at the moment. Like if you watched it trade up near 830 and I was like, this is trading really slow, this is the opposite of that. So like this, if this was doing this speed up into 830, like on the way up, I would not be trying to get short. So for that same reason, when it's going down at this level of speed, you will not see me trying to get long into this. This is unsettled, hasn't picked a spot that it can hold yet. So one interesting place to look at if we do continue to pull back, take out a bunch of levels, which looks like they have the momentum and volume to do at the moment. There's a big order sitting at 50, 650. But this is kind of lining up down here, this imbalance level that didn't get retested. Excuse me, that broke higher and never came back and retested, which is sitting right here at 619. That's that 180 that's on my screen here. Sorry, 618 and 3/4. That's sitting right at the edge of value. It's sitting right below the opening range low. And it's kind of like this little top that they like sellers tried to defend and ultimately lost on the way back up. So I don't hate that. I don't hate that for a potential spot for a long, but if it comes down with this level of velocity, it's gotta chill out for a minute. So stick around for a minute just because it's only like 60-ish points away from that level and we're trading pretty fast. So very open to the idea that it might just like chop around here in the middle, but this would be my sort of like first point of reference on the way back down. It's also not terribly far away from the upper end of this absorption level from yesterday. And I think this study is like misbehaving itself because we actually haven't seen any print today. There's this one, but I'm surprised that it hasn't printed any during RTH. So, like I've said, I think I said on Wednesday when we kind of like looked at that study, it's very much in development. So, I'll dig into why it hasn't flagged anything in this session. I think that that's probably unlikely given the logic behind, like the logic that I know is behind that. So it's probably some unrelated coding error. I think the levels that it's drawing are correct. It's not drawing for the current session for like RTH levels, which makes me think that something is not right. So held just in front of the session mid, right below the previous day's high, not getting a little relief bounce back up into the point of control. They heard me talk about this lower level and now we're going higher. How come when I'm short and I talk about the level that I'm short at, that never works in that direction? Buyer's getting a nice push here. Uh, basically getting a rebid off the previous day's high. Now, like I have lost, if I was trying to get short this, which I'm not, uh, I have lost an incredible amount of money trying to short these things on the way back up and like not waiting for a spot for it to like hold. So like let's say it gets stuck at 740, right? And then comes back to 700. I'd be more interested in the short now at 740 the second time. But like, oh my gosh, I would just be like picking numbers out of a hat is what I used to do. I'd be like, oh, 730 seems like a good place. What if it holds this top? And I would just get run over, and then ultimately roll over without me. So try not to do that anymore. Right back to the buy side. Some decent rotations. Like it's been tradable, but there has been a lot of chop in between. Like that's a good move. This is an annoying short to be in. This is an okay move on the long side up. This is really annoying. And then this was like a very directional short. So I don't think this, unless something wild happens, I don't think this really goes anywhere meaningful today. I think it's just going to chop around in zone, and the more times that we like trade through these levels and the more volume that we start to put in the middle, like the more it's time for me to say happy Friday and go do something else with my day. Figure out why this study isn't printing absorption levels or something like that. Just wanted to see where this zone. So this is kind of like an interesting spot. I'm not going to short this here. But this is like flagged absorption from earlier from the overnight session. You'll see that like it's a lighter red color than the these from here. So just kind of a point of reference in space here if they want to try to take this higher. They haven't really reacted very well to this level. You'll see that it's mostly just rotated through it. So that's why I'm not really interested in shorting it. But whenever we go like vertical, either down or up, I'm always kind of like looking for what are the most like quote unquote obvious uh, levels in space in terms of like, you have this like just straight vertical move down, right? Like, where's it going to get stuck? So that's one of the things I like about using the scalper IQ studies and using order flow is like what looks to be just like a sort of unknown place to potentially get short gives you like a point of reference here. Now, whether we actually react to that, I don't know, and I don't really want to be getting short in the middle of value here and off another like bounce off the previous day's high. Like that doesn't sound fun to me. But ironically, the top of this is like where I would have been taking profit from our 830 short that I didn't get filled on. They're going to push up into it. So let's see what it looks like at this level. It's like 760. Like I said, I'm not going to short this here. I just want to see what it trades like here. So it's actually like right, we'll call it like the exact level is like 57-ish or something like that. They just tagged it. Tagged it and rejected right from it the first time. Oops, sorry, I didn't mean to hit the mic. So that's like this is like a very much like see how it trades here. This zone, even though it's flagging absorption, right, has really just like been rotated around. So would not be I would not be apt to like step into a short here because this level has not shown us that like it wants to hold that exactly. You are seeing some offers here from sellers, like some bigger offers right around 60. Um, but yeah, just like where it's at in the overall session is not interesting to me. I'm only looking here just to kind of as curiosity to see if they're going to hold this price down. And I also think about like what we're bouncing off of, right? So like, yes, this was a strong move down. Yes, it ran a bunch of stops, but ultimately it's bouncing off the previous day's high again, which is that's not bearish. It's choppy and annoying, but it's not really bearish. So I was hoping for a little bit lower. I was kind of hoping they would come down and test this 620 level, which they still could do, but I might not still be trading when that happens. So getting a little reoffer from this price here. If I was really going to be interested in shorting it, I would need to see this like sell off back down to like 715 ish and then come back up and test it again. Um, it was such a fast move down that like sometimes if it's news related, the market just like, all the algorithms react to the news and you get this like really fast sell off. And then it gets down and it holds some like, semi normal level of support at like, say, the previous day's high. What an obvious place, right? And then the market's like, I actually don't care about the news anymore. So the algorithms are there to like take your money, not in like a malicious type, they're hunting stop way, but they're going to react to those headlines and then they're going to see if other traders like pile in. So it just kind of like feeds on itself. So it's another reason I don't like to trade news is it has a really nasty habit of being like one directional and then the market deciding that like it doesn't actually care. So actually getting some selling off of this level is a little bit interesting. My issue with it is less that we're getting selling off of it and in terms of like taking a position myself, and more that like it's like smack dab in the middle of value. Basically getting, it actually is the point of control. It's like a little bit hidden underneath that zone right now, but point of control is like 753 and the level we were looking at is like 757. So that was a mean move though. That was, they like held 800 for what, 10:45? Yeah, like almost a little over 30 minutes. Just held that price. Then they flushed it and then they popped it back up and then there was some kind of news headline that came out and then they really flushed it. So, also if you're new to the stream, feel free to hop in chat, say hi. Always love to have new people here. Also, our there's a link in the description, I believe. There's a our Discord is free to join, so there's plenty of people there to chat with. If you're curious about Scalper IQ, curious about any of the studies that you see on the chart, that's a great place to join and ask questions. It's free to join, so feel free to hop in there and say hi, poke around, ask questions. We're a friendly bunch. And if you hop into our Discord, I'm obviously pretty active in there answering questions and things like that. You're welcome to join and just like DM me if you like, don't want to hop into the fray of any type of discussion. You're welcome to like hop in and just like send me a DM if you have questions about anything that you see on stream or anything trading related. I'm available, like to talk about trading. So this didn't pull, like if I was looking to short this didn't pull back far enough for me to be interested in a short. I would have wanted to see like back to like 715, back to like maybe these highs right here, and then back up here. This just kind of like pulled back 15 or 20 points. And that's the other thing, like when you're talking about levels like that, Scalper IQ has printed this absorption level from way back around when the data dropped this morning, right? But like when you look at how the market has actually reacted to that level, it really hasn't. So like it's kind of a point of reference, but no different than if you're like, I drew my support level at 780 or whatever you decided to draw at, right? If price is just rotating around you, your support level isn't good, or like the market doesn't care about your support level, right? So I think it's important to like, draw your levels, stick to your levels, that kind of thing, but observe what's happening at your level as well. If price is rotating around you and not holding it cleanly, that's not that's like good information to trade on, but it's not uh like don't force your level. Like I'm not surprised to see this pushing through this level because we just haven't seen this level hold cleanly all the way through. So I didn't see whether this was news related. If it is, my inclination is that they're just going to take it right back up to 800. So just a nice quick flush of 800 back down to the previous day's high and then rally back up. But, zooming out, like we're just trading back over the same prices over and over again. Like there's not a lot of price discovery happening, and as the session progresses, like this is just probably going to get messier. So, and I'm really not interested in this short again at 830. Like I wanted it the first time we get up there. If we flush back down to the previous day's high and get it all the way back up to 830, think they're probably going to try to get it through the high, so probably not going to try to short it there. So like kind of the last, at least right now, the area that I'm interested in is like if we get more selling back to the downside, which doesn't look like what's happening right now, um, I'd be interested in seeing how price responds at 620. But, we're a solid 140 points away from that right now. It's like if I wasn't on stream, I would like probably have my phone in my hand and my feet up on my desk, uh, waiting for price to get to a level like that. Um, because as I've said before on stream, like monkey brain can really take over just boredom and like, oh, I think I see a trade in here. Oh, they're trying to hold this level. And you lose your zoomed out picture that you're just like in the middle of a bunch of chop. So trade your edges always, in my opinion. Don't get, as they say, don't diddle in the middle. Uh, but on days like today, that becomes even more important. And honestly, the better trades are near the edges here. Like the market has basically told you the from the start that like it doesn't really want to move out of this range. So you don't have any business being involved in the middle. So fade the upper side, long the bottom. So, and that's kind of what we've done thus far. We took a trade and figure out where it's at now because it's been a minute. So there was an imbalance level here. If I pop that back on, we've traded a few more since then. So this level, which they actually just held perfectly again. Didn't even notice that. That's what I get for not having all my levels turned on. But we took this trade earlier because push off the low, come back and hold this imbalance level. You're getting a really nice bounce off it again. I still probably wouldn't have been able to get into this trade. Like I would have looked for hold, bounce up a little bit, come down and hold it a second time and then be long. But that was coming down with a lot of velocity, so I don't really have much. That's like a nice hold, and that's absolutely a trade that you can take. But that was coming down with a lot of violence, so I would have wanted to see that trade there for a minute. But I think this is just going right back to 800. Market decided it doesn't care. It doesn't care about whatever happened. Whatever that news was, it just doesn't care anymore. It got its liquidity. All right, I'm going to turn off this level in the middle. Don't show ETH zones. It's just like right at the point of control, and we're just like rotating around it. I just kind of wanted to see what it would do if we got back up to that, but the answer is the same thing it's been doing the whole time, which is just rotate around it. Let's see if they have thrown any big liquidity back up at 800. Not really. Don't see anything bigger than 15 or 16 contracts. In our 30 level, no big sellers there. Nobody cares. There's a big seller at 50. This 49 contract order. I don't really see much. There's really not much in the way of, in terms of like order flow, I don't see like they're just drifting back up. It's like 100 points off the rebid of that level down here though. That's nice. Just with that level of momentum, I just was going to be interested in a little bit lower. Too much inside of value for me. You do get like a little tiny low volume node there that's been created by all of the tests of this 670 level, but below that, it's a pretty flat profile until you get to like 580. So like had sellers been able to get it underneath this level, I think it would have been a pretty quick trip down below the opening range low. So just since there's not really anything interesting that I'm going to be trading intraday here, let's just look on a higher time frame as we get closer to the conclusion of this week. So this 30,050/65 level continues to be a thorn in the side of buyers who are interested to take this back up to all-time highs on the NASDAQ. It's also becoming a very obvious level. So I would not want to be short that the next time we touch that price. So I think sellers have defended it. You're now talking 1, 2, 3, 4. It's a quadruple top of the same price. If buyers get that back up there again, there's a lot of stops and a lot of like kind of just a pocket of air on the other side of that. So who knows? They could hold it a fifth time, but I wouldn't bank on that. Granted, it doesn't really matter at the moment. We're 300 points away from that, which doesn't look like we're going anywhere near it today. But this would be a solid, productive week for the buyers. You know, we moved value up for the first time in a number of weeks. So if you're seeing the little like dashed horizontal lines, that's just where like 70% of the volume was done each week. So like the last time we moved it up was the last week of June, and we only moved it up a little bit. And then it was like lower value, lower value, lower value, lower value, lower value. And then this week you're actually putting in a significantly higher area of value that price is transacting above. So this would be a productive week for the Bulls overall. Um, and they stopped at a pretty obvious place. So being able to hold this up here, not seeing any like sell-offs into close, can they close this kind of like I think a close above 800 I think would be really productive. Just holding it above this week's point of control is probably good enough to see if we can get some continuation into next week. So if we finish there, like as we open Globex on Sunday and go into Monday's RTH session, as long as no insane war headlines happen over the weekend, I think that it makes a lot of sense that um, buyers would come into next week with a little bit of an edge. And obvious target is like 30,000. And I think if they get it through this level, I think it's going to be a real quick trip up to this next pivot high, which is like 500. So like there's traffic in there for sure, but that would be if I was going to be buying that break, which that's like too many points to be trading that way intraday. But if I was like swinging that, I would be like maybe risking like 150 points and looking for 500 to the upside on that break. But just things to keep in mind. Got another sell imbalance here. I don't really, it doesn't, it's in the right, it's like right below the point of control. So you're getting a little move off of it, but I think that's probably going to do it for the stream here today. Thank you guys for joining in. This was a lot of fun. Caught one long scalp in the morning and missed my second short idea, or my only short idea, but missed my second trade. I just didn't get filled. Got front run a little bit by a bigger order and got a nice move off of it, but wasn't a part of it. So gonna end the session up whatever. I'm just looking around for my like 180 points, like 60 points on 3 M and Q. This is the first session that I've traded larger size, so I'm pretty happy to be walking away green. We'll be back again on Monday. If you enjoyed the stream, hit the like button. If you're interested more about Scalper IQ, feel free to join the Discord. There's a link in the description. Otherwise, I'll see you guys on Monday. Enjoy the weekend.